To me, I believe there's far too much, say, surface area for attacks for the Arizona audit, specifically because of the unknown relationship between Lin Wood, Jim Penrose, and Doug Logan. I think if many people knew exactly what they were doing and how they were doing it out there on Lin's property, I think everybody would agree that Doug Logan wasn't the best person to do the audit, because it just left so many doors wide open. So many questions can be asked about it. And so I think we missed a valuable opportunity because Doug was pushed, and everybody knows that Doug had his biases. So that was the reason I came and spoke out so loudly about it. I just want to put that out there.
Okay, and so tell us how you ended up. You are the manager of his nonprofit, right? Is that what it is? Tell us exactly your title as far as in relation to Kyle and how you interacted with him.
Right. So I think the worst part about this was the fact that this guy, Kyle, kind of got wrapped up in a lot of this stuff. I was the first executive director of the Fightback Foundation. I was elected to that position on September 2nd. That was the first board of directors meeting. I had been working with Lin since March of 2020. When things happened with Kyle, I kind of jumped in there to help sort of organize everything, and that's when he asked me to be the first executive director. So I stayed on with Lin for about a month and a half. There was some spending, some overspending, and some misappropriations of donations for Kyle that I did not agree with. So I basically lived with Lin from August until I resigned, which was on October 20th.
And was that in Georgia?
That was in South Carolina. Oh. And so my company installed all his cameras, all his network devices, all his like security systems, and my company installed all that on all his properties. And then I took up the role at Fightback, and that's what most of my time was committed to until the day he punched me in the face and pulled a gun on me. And that was the end of that relationship.
I didn't know those details. I haven't even read that far.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I have read some articles, but didn't know really what led up to everything.
Yeah. I can go into that later.
Tell us a little about that then.
I can go into.
Oh yeah, start wherever you want to start.
Right.
First of all, tell us, Kyle was a minor, right, when all this happened?
How was what?
Kyle was a minor when his event occurred in Kenosha, right?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. So he was 17.
I just want to point that out because I want everybody to know that he was a minor. For one, he was not making decisions for himself. His mother was a mother freaking out because of her son, what he had been wrapped up in. We all know how that area was at that time of the year. So just remember that whenever he tells you what happens, because I am a mother of sons. And when I found out some things that were said to this woman, I was infuriated. And I was just like, how in the world could you say this to somebody like that? Especially when the son can't even stick up for himself. So I just want you to know that before he tells you whatever else he's going to tell you.
So I'll let Kyle say hi first. Want to say hi?
Hello, everybody. I'm Kyle.
Hey, Kyle. One of our owners is actually in Wisconsin, and she was like, "How did you get him on here?" She just came back. She's been gone for a few months, and she was super excited to have you on.
Thank you.
So I was at Lin's house on the 25th of August, which was in Atlanta. At that time, I was there, and I saw this incident happen, and I saw it on the news, and I started getting really into it. I was a SEAL for 15 years, so I kind of understand like use of force and self-defense and things of that nature, right? I said, Lin, we really got to help this kid. He's going to get railroaded. And they started to railroad him. They started to say that he was part of some militia, to say that he was some white supremacist. Look, all the investigations have been done by the prosecution, by NPR, by the ADL, and there is zero evidence that Kyle had any affiliation with any extremist group or militia or whatever you want to call them at all, right? And so Lin kind of took it up. Lin said, I'm going to help this kid out, and we're going to have Fightback do it, right? So at the same time, we had John Pierce doing whatever he could to contact the family. This was on the 26th of
Okay,
October.
wait, hold up. Can you tell us who that is so everybody knows?
John Pierce was his first lead, lawyer for defense, right? So try to stick with me because this can get kind of complex. So John Pierce, Lawson, Pedigo, and Lin Wood on October 12th, 2020, they went into business together and they started a organization called Fightback Foundation. Now, there was zero assets, there was zero operations, nothing had been done except for the incorporation of that business in Texas. Okay. How did they
What
get
was
to
the
know
business in Texas?
Fightback Foundation?
Oh, it's in Texas?
Yeah, it's
Go
based in
figure.
Texas.
Everything's
Yep.
in Texas. That's bad. Sorry.
Yeah.
I live in Texas. I can say that.
And the reason they did this was a pretty seriously polarized sort of message from the start. They got to know each other because Lawson Pedigo and Lawson Pedigo and John Pierce were both on Carter Page's defamation suit in DC. Carter wanted to bring on Lin Wood to help him. So they had a phone call on the 9th of August of 2020. And that was the first time that that Lin met John Pierce, Lawson Pedigo, and Carter. Okay. A few days later, John Pierce asked Lin to be a part of his organization. The entire Fightback idea was John Pierce's idea. Okay. He mimicked the same thing for NCLU now. Okay. So this was never Lin Wood's freaking creation. It was never his foundation. That is just not true. Okay. So John starts trying to get a hold of the family. And apparently he reached them by phone. At the same time he was trying to get a hold of the family, he had some friends of his, some pretty sketchy friends, start up a website so they could start to bring in these tons of donations. And when I say tons of donations, in the first 72 hours, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations.
Are you talking about Lin or John?
I'm talking about John. John. Fightback, from Lin's perspective, hadn't taken up the candle yet. Okay. John was sort of like unilaterally going out saying Fightback is going to do this because John has a lot of financial issues. He saw money signs, period. Right. Some serious financial issues. He's got $70 million in debt. He's got some things going on. When Lin and I started to learn about some of these things going on, Lin, I think, realized that he's part of this organization and we need to get our arms wrapped around it. And so that's what he asked me to do. And I did that. I actually created the website that you see now when you go to Fightback Foundation. I tried to sort of depolarize it as much as we could. And we started to be the like collection bin for all these sort of like disparate fundraising efforts for Kyle, right? Like the intent when we started was to raise this money and to bring it all into one area. Okay. So then that could be used for his defense. Lin's, something that frustrates me now from hearing what he says was Lin's original intent was to fund his defense and then give him a check at the very end of it so he could start his life again, right? Like there was never an idea that people were, say, donating to Fightback. They were donating to Kyle. Fightback was just going to be the recipient of those donations, right? So we're talking about $1.2 million was raised before the end of September, just on PayPal alone. Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit to September 2nd. John resigned on September 2nd. He couldn't be Kyle's like defense counsel if he was still on the board. And so he put in his resignation letter, and he was the lead like defense counsel. Look, John Pierce brought a 35 page engagement agreement to Wendy Rittenhouse. Wendy is not a very sophisticated lady, especially when it comes to the law, right? She's got some Harvard educated attorney rushing in, and she's got Lin Wood, and they're like, we're going to take care of everything. You don't worry about anything at all. It's all going to be funded and paid for. Sort of
Yeah, you don't mean that in a rude way. You're just saying she's like a normal human being that doesn't know.
She's a normal human being whose son is in prison, and she has a Harvard educated attorney and Lin Wood rushing on white horses, right? So she's just like, oh gosh, what do I do? And she signed the engagement agreement. Now, John Pierce, who's never done a defense case in his life, he's never done a defense case in his life. Okay. And now he feels like he can jump in there and pick up a double homicide case. And not only that, was John charged $1,275 an hour. Right. So by the end of September, we received an invoice from John Pierce for $114,000. This is 4 days later. So,
that's gracious.
Yeah. So not cool, right?
And he's still in prison, right?
I'm sorry?
The whole time. He's in prison the whole time this is occurring.
And Kyle is in prison. Yep. So the idea was to fight extradition. We brought on very, very good attorneys. A guy by the name of Chris Van Wagner, Jessa Nicholson, Marina Medvin. We brought in very good attorneys, but John was the leader, right? About this time, about the middle of September, Lin really found out about all of John's problems, but he decided he was in the position to give him absolution. Any reasonable person would have been like, no, you can't be associated with this. There's no experience behind you. And he's billing hundreds of thousands of dollars. So this is what I want people to know. Unfortunately, Lin believed that there was going to be utter chaos after the election. And so Lin wanted to keep Kyle in prison because he believed that nobody would be doing any cases after the election. All right. I mean, he stated this himself, and I have it on recording.
I posted the recording today on the channel because I thought it was interesting that it was pre-election, and that he somehow knew that there was going to be chaos.
Right.
I mean, Trump told us about there's going to probably be some fraud, but the recording was making it to me when I listened to it. I feel like I heard him correct himself. And then also I felt like it was being hyped up more of like what the Capitol incident turned into. Like the election was going to turn into that.
Yes. And it wasn't based on any solid legal theory, right? to keep him in jail from Lin's perspective. And he'll tell you now he was not one of Kyle's lawyers. He'll tell you he didn't have anything to do with the those kind of decisions. That is not true. Lin took the control of the entire like defense team, and basically he sort of like what him said freaking goes. Like he said, I want him to stay in prison because he's safer there. He's safer at home with his mother. Okay. Lin didn't know anything about, he's not a defense attorney either, neither Lin nor John. So John wanted to do a habeas argument based on the fact that the Constitution says that Kyle was in an unincorporated militia at the age of 17, right? It's a novel argument that was never going to work, especially when you're looking at a extradition. And please, Kellye, jump in here if I'm off base. It was never going to work, especially in this a neighboring state extradition trial. And all of the team was telling John and Lin, don't do this. Don't do this. Well, John went on Tucker and he said the whole like militia thing. Like, I think Kyle was in a militia because he was 17. Now, nobody understands those nuances. So what happened was John and Lin basically screwed Kyle by claiming he was in a militia. So that solidified in the eyes and the ears of all Americans that now Kyle was actually in a militia, right? It took us 10 months to get that argument out of people's heads. It just was poorly thought out. So John, so the three attorneys, John and I'm sorry, like Marina and CVW, Chris Van Wagner, and Jack and Justin Nicholson, they left, right? Like they said, this is ridiculous. This is not going to work. Like John needs to listen, and he just didn't. So he shows up to extradition. He said he was going to have witnesses, blah, blah, blah. He showed up 30 seconds, maybe 30 seconds, and then Kyle lost the extradition, and he was gone. Well, John, who we had paid from Fightback Foundation $260,000 by this point in time, he didn't have he did not present a motion to stay, right? He sent in an email that he would file it on Monday. Problem was, by the time he sent that email right after the hearing, I mean, Kyle was halfway to Kenosha, right? So all in, Fightback spent upwards of $700,000 on a month and a half on a failed extradition because John nor Lin had any idea what they were doing, period.
Because Linda's defamation, right?
Yes. Right.
Okay, I guess I should have probably asked you this beforehand. Can you give us a simple version of what actually took place? Are you allowed to say that?
No.
I know he's like going somewhere, so I didn't know. Yeah, he has court and stuff, so I don't want to.
No.
I mean, okay, just go do some research on what happened, you guys. If you don't know his story, I'm sure you all do, but I just wanted to ask.
But I jump in there real quick because I want to. This is kind of like a weird little reach around. So I actually have Gun Owners of America from the DC, like, so they had kind of been using me for referrals down here in Texas. And when all the stuff happened with Kyle, a lot of us reached out and said, hey, and so I'm a former prosecutor. There's a ton of former prosecutors on there. You know, we've all, you know, we're pretty well educated on gun rights and we actually reached out to the head of gun owners and told them that we would all come and assist, but basically we were all hands on deck, kind of like with the election, like we were all hands on deck. There are just some of us that just do that kind of work. But anyway, all that to say is that actually John Pierce wouldn't even contact several of us back.
Right.
And most of us were actual like criminal attorneys or had done criminal work historically. So, we were willing to go up there. And I mean, I even said, look, just pay my expenses and I'll come up there and help out. But literally he shot me and I think there was probably like 3 others that I'm aware of down from coming down or being able to go up there to assist the team, just so you know.
Right. No, I'm well aware. Look, thousands and thousands and thousands of people were sending in emails that had experience as paralegals, as all kinds of different attorneys. I mean, you wouldn't believe the reaction. And we were not to contact any of them. Like, this was supposed to be John Pierce's thing, that Lin sort of was going to be guiding. So Lin took the whole like strategic head of this defense team, and he claims that he wasn't involved, but that's not true. He was very much the strategic leader. And Chris Van Wagner himself sent an email to Lin and said, hey, look, I need things to happen here for us to be full throat on this case.
Who is that again?
That was Chris Van Wagner.
Yeah, but who is he again? Just in case.
He's a defense attorney out of Wisconsin.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, he's one of the best defense attorneys in Wisconsin. And Lin said, no, he was very, very, very rude to him. Very rude. So I'm going to be publishing all of these documents. I'm going to be sharing them with the public because people need to know how this happened, right? This was a miscarriage of justice on Kyle from the prosecutor's standpoint, and it was a total miscarriage of justice from Lin Wood and Fightback and what they have done to this family. It is shameful. All right, so let me fast forward a little bit. So John loses extradition and Kyle is extradited. And it's at this point that they really need to figure out what's going to happen. We knew that there was I think it was a $2 million bail set in Wisconsin, right? By this time, by the end of October, Fightback had brought in $2.1 million. So had they not spent $700K on the extradition, or $700K on the extradition, then Kyle would have been out a month and a half sooner, right?
And he was in like regular prison, right? Not juvenile?
He was in a juvenile facility when he was in Illinois. And then when he came over to Kenosha, he was put in the Kenosha jail.
Okay, I just want to make sure that, because I didn't know in Texas, when you're 17, you're an adult. So
right. So he was extradited. He ended up in Kenosha, and then the big push for bail came. Look, I have Lin on recording too, and I didn't record all of these like surreptitiously. I recorded these for facts. I recorded these with everybody's awareness, right? And Lin claimed a couple times that he's never going to go to trial. This is never going to go to trial. He said it over and over again. And then everybody who was still kind of like tangentially on the defense team was like, what do you mean? Of course this is going to trial. He's like, no, it's not going to trial, right? At one point, he said that Donald Trump is going to pardon him. Anybody who's an attorney knows that that's just not possible, right? So all of these things were very concerning, and I brought it up to Lin in October. He made a commitment to the Walkaway Foundation for $100,000. And I'm going to show my emails too, where I have a problem with that because we do not have $100,000 to just give away. All of this money was transferred in, okay, for donations for Kyle. And let me caveat that. Wendy Rittenhouse herself sent Fightback nearly $1 million that she received in donations from separate fundraising sources, specifically $585,000 from Give, Send, Go. Wendy sent that to Fightback. She talked to Give, Send, Go, and she said, I want this to go to Fightback because they will be good stewards. So when Lin says that he doesn't have a legal obligation, and he stated this on his Telegram, that him nor Fightback has a legal obligation to Wendy Rittenhouse, I was furious because they absolutely have a legal obligation to provide an accounting and to let Wendy know how that money was spent, right? And people don't know that. People need to know that, right? So let's get to the 1st of November. Now the big push for bail is here. They have to raise somewhere around 800,000 because they've already spent 700, and I think they spent another 100K or so with the walkaway donation, right? So I had resigned formally a couple days earlier, and they started to do this big push to get all the rest of the money for bail, right? If they didn't misspend, and this is what I want people to know, if they didn't waste hundreds of thousands of dollars on the extradition, right? Or at least didn't pay John 300K by this point to lose extradition, that bail money would have been available much earlier than it was, and Kyle would have been freed, okay? So they started this big push for bail. Let's say this is about like November 1st. Well, somebody at the organization had taken down the selector menu. They changed platform, something happened. So now everybody who was donating for Kyle was being mixed up with who was donating because of the election fraud stuff, right? So millions of dollars came flooding into Fightback, and they had no way to discern how much was coming in for Kyle and how much was coming in for this election fraud stuff. I mean, that really happened. So their solution was to just pull a 70-30 split. Let's just pull 70-30. So they said everything that came in from the 1st to the 17th, we're just going to give 70 to Kyle, 30 to the election side. Well, can't really do that, right? There's a way with GAAP for that to get done as long as you sort of like disclose and back it up. But they retroactively applied that 70-30 split to all donations to Kyle, going back to the 26th of August, right? So he provided a recent accounting, and it states $699,000 was brought in through PayPal. I object to that because I have the financial statements, right? $1.2 million was actually brought in through PayPal. And there's several more sort of, I don't want to say like inaccuracies, but it's just outwardly false. Okay, so then Kyle gets bailed out. I resigned, so I was home in Reno hanging out with my family, and John Pierce calls me and he's like, can you help me pull Kyle out? I said, absolutely. So I fly to Wisconsin the day before, and I meet Wendy, and I'm the one who picked up Kyle from the Justice Center when he got bailed out. Okay. We drove all the way down to the safe house. I'm doing air quotes right now, that that John had arranged for them. And we go to the hotel where they're going to have their family's going to meet, because Kyle is finally free after 87 days. And we go walking into the room, and there's Ricky Schroeder. Ricky Schroeder's sitting in the room. And nobody knows why. Apparently he gave a sizable $150,000 donation that sort of took it over the edge. And so Ricky says hello, and he's there. And
can I ask you a question really quick?
Yeah.
Did Mike Lindell, didn't he supposedly donate something?
So I've also got loud with Mike too a little bit, because Mike donated $50,000 to the election stuff. Lin Wood, by accident or probably on purpose, because at that time Mike Lindell was one of his clients, said he donated for Kyle. The next day, Mike Lindell does a press conference and says, I didn't donate to that kid. I donated to the election fraud stuff.
So
Right,
was he trying to separate himself from Kyle?
Yes, very much so. It was politically expedient at that point for him to sort of step away and not support Kyle. So I take issue when people give Mike credit, because that wasn't his intent. His intent wasn't to help the kid. His intent was to give Fightback money for fraud. That just goes to show you how screwed up the Fightback, say, books were at this time. I mean, how do you have the chairman say that a $50,000 donation wasn't even meant for one cause? That just goes to show you how they had zero control, or basically zero idea as to who's giving what for what, right? It was a mess. It was a total mess. All right, I'm not losing anybody, am I?
No, I just wanted to ask because somebody that lives in Wisconsin had said something. They followed this case very closely because they lived very close and it affected their life. So they remembered Mike Lindell saying he had paid like half the bill or something. So that's why I was just asking, because I didn't personally know, and I wanted to ask, how he was tied into Kyle.
And I wish I had actually known that when Sidney Powell and all of them were hauling Lin Wood around. I mean, not Mike Lindell and Lin Wood, as a matter of fact, because I remember there was an article that came out, I think in December, that was about John Pierce and him, basically a court hearing where the judge was kind of reaming him, I think, on some of his ethics stuff somewhere back in there.
Yep.
And I remember that. So when John Pierce resurfaces after the 6th with the defendants, I was really mad. And I was already on the fence with Lin Wood because of that from back in December, because I'd kind of put that stuff together. So I had already kind of figured out that there are these, attorneys that are running around ripping people off. And I did not know that about Mike Lindell, though. So that's very interesting because, yeah, just moving forward in what's happened, that's really interesting for me. So thank you for that information.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get you off track.
No, it's fine. I'm trying not to jump around here because this is a very complex sort of situation. I've told a lot of people this. I've told Kyle's attorneys this, all this information. So just trying to make sure that I keep it somewhat linear so it's easier to understand. So Kyle gets bailed out. I help pick him up, and we go back. Look, I mean, Ricky donated $150,000. Do I think it was bad judgment to have him there on the reunion? Yes, I do. I'm not going to hide that at all. But then the question arises shortly thereafter. So John starts having these issues with Lin. Lin transferred that bail money that came from Fightback, right? It should have gone to Wendy's account, and Wendy should have posted the bond. John wanted to be the one to post the bond. He said it's safer for security or whatever. So John received the $2 million, and the instructions and the emails that relate to that were specifically for Wendy Rittenhouse, for the benefit of Kyle Rittenhouse and his defense, right? There was never any thought, there was never any sort of claim by Fightback that this money should go back to them. There was never a discussion about that. This was the post the bail for Kyle and for the benefit of Wendy and Kyle. Yes, it got him out, but because John Pierce and because like Lin Wood have been finagling over this money, which we don't even care about, it has prevented Wendy from seeking financing sort of avenues that can collateralize on that bond to pay legal fees. And I'll talk more on that here in a little bit. Wendy got wind of an email that Lin tried to go all stop on Kyle's fundraising before he was bailed out. So on the 14th, the fundraiser for Fightback was trying to get out some emails, okay? These house file emails are using all of the data from people who have already donated to Kyle. So all the money they're raising for bail, they're raising off of Wendy's media appearances and off of emails to the house file that is all donors to Kyle, including the 41,000 donors that gave money to Give, Send, Go. Wendy never offered.
Kyle was like the cash cow for the conservatives before the election. Like that was we had been fighting with, the riots and stuff. And then, boom, here's this kid. So, everybody was talking about it. I remember that.
Yep. And so Lin and Fightback would send out these house file emails asking for more money. But they were sending it to people who already donated to Kyle, and they were using data that Wendy didn't authorize them to use, specifically didn't authorize them to use. So I hear Lin with that. I mean, how classless do you have to be to send a letter to the court saying that you want the bail back on the day that he's in a freaking hearing, the most important hearing yet, right? I mean, come on, that's just absolutely classless. But they claim that this money was raised by their supporters, right? And so I push back against that, and I say absolutely not. They were using data, Wendy's data, and Wendy's money to pay this bail, and now they want it back. And I'll tell you why they want it back. At the end of November, coming into December, Wendy wanted some answers from Fightback, especially with that email that Lin states that he wants to stop fundraising for Kyle before Kyle gets the bail money. He says he focuses on Georgia. He's focusing on Georgia. So he wanted to stop raising money for Kyle's bail before Kyle was even bailed out.
Well, can you give us a timeline of like what month this is?
This is on the 14th of November.
Okay, so right after the election.
And Kyle was bailed out on the 20th.
Okay, cool.
So Wendy didn't like that, and she asked for a accounting. How much was brought in? What was spent on who for what? And Fightback and Lin denied her. They would not provide one. Period. Right? So Wendy does the smart thing, and she says, well, then they're not authorized to raise any more money for Kyle. After she did that, Lin sort of took to his Twitter and said, I have withdrawn from the case. Like, Lin was fired, right? Like, all Wendy wanted was an accounting. She just wanted to know how much was brought in and what was spent. She just wanted a fair accounting. That was it. All this drama could have been completely over or never happened if they had just provided an accounting, right? I gave her an accounting because I had all the information up to the day that I left. When we found out that they just applied a random split to the money, questions started to arise, right? Like, that's why they won't give an accounting, and that's why they won't do an audit, because they cannot determine how much money was brought in for the foundation and how much money was brought in for Kyle. That is the reason they won't do an independent third-party audit, right? So Wendy said, that's enough. Stop fundraising. They didn't. They continued to raise money off of links that have Kyle's face on it until the 13th of December, which was a problem. So we asked them to fix that. We also asked them to please put some kind of note on the website that says that Fightback is not raising money for Kyle anymore. And then please provide a link. If people are looking to donate to Kyle, just click this link, Free Kyle USA, which is what Wendy created. They refused. If you guys go back and look, they've never put a link to redirect people who wanted to donate to Kyle. Lin was jaded. He was mad. He was mad that Wendy said, enough is enough. If you won't give us an accounting, we don't want you doing this anymore. That was the most callous, cold thing that I could ever imagine. Okay, so about that time, Wendy asked me to help her build a new sort of fundraising platform, Free Kyle USA. So we did that. So we built Free Kyle USA. At the time, the donations were going to John Pierce's account, but we tracked those. And so we know every dollar where that went. Fightback, at this point, they realized how exposed they were. So they paid the bills that were submitted by Mark Richards and by the investigators. They paid those bills in December, but those were invoices sent September and October and November. They were 3 months late on paying those invoices. I mean, Kyle almost lost his whole defense team because Fightback didn't pay the bills. How crazy is that? So,
yeah.
And so we created Free Kyle USA. I talked to lawyers, I talked to accountants all over the place, and I wanted to set up an organization that was done properly. And money going into John Pierce's account was not done properly. So I got with a couple of attorneys, one guy who's an amazing asset protection attorney, and we created the Milo Trust, okay? And that was created with input from several awesome attorneys and by 2 major accounting firms. This is how this needs to be set up. This was something novel, right? Starting up a huge sort of crowdfunding experience for a case of this huge in magnitude was a big deal. So it had to be done right. I mean, crowdfunding defense stuff is all over the place now, right? But for this case in particular, given its very like dynamic sort of tendencies and tentacles into several different like national issues, right? Was huge that it was done right. So we created the Milo Trust, and we created a LLC called the Milo Fund LLC. And the Milo Fund LLC was the I'll say is the like transactional entity. The Milo Fund LLC is what actually gets the all the donations, sorry, and then pays all the bills. Okay? Every single payment, every single one has to be approved in writing by Wendy. I'm not associated with any of the finances, okay, because I'm very close to Kyle and Wendy and to the family. That is done by a corporate trustee who is also the manager, right? So this thing was set up where nobody has access to the bank account except for the corporate and bank freaking trustee that pays all the bills, period. And the front side of that is Free Kyle USA, right? Every dollar that has come in to Free Kyle USA has been paid out to attorneys, to experts, for the security aspect, every single one. And we have a badass accounting team that does all the reconciliations every month, right? And so Lin attacked us, and he attacked Free Kyle USA because we were calling him out. I was calling him out. I was saying, just give an accounting. He only just provided his accounting to Kyle's lawyers, these awesome lawyers from Nelson Mullins. And that's where we're at. So is there any questions so far?
I think that whenever I was learning about this, and the only person on Telegram that's ever called this out is Brian Cates. I don't particularly like Brian Cates, but I did agree with him on this and the Tory affidavit. I did agree with him on both of those things. He did pick apart the John Roberts thing, which I read that whole whistleblower thing. I don't. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the truth is on that, and until somebody's charged with for it, then I mean, I don't know what to believe. But at first, I was kind of like, wow, why would you attack that guy? But then I started, once I realized a lot of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes with this whole audit thing, um, to me, I started realizing that this is not, we have been pitted against one another left and right. And they use different events for each one. But the more you look into it, the more similar they are. It's really all the same people that orchestrate the whole thing. They just choose which side to target. So to me, this sounded nothing different than the Black Lives Matter stuff, because that woman or those women, whoever they were, they went and bought mansions, and then the families were like, "Where's the money?"
Right.
They got rich off of their name, off of these
Right.
victims' names. So that's when I started really, I've been putting stuff together for a few weeks now, and um, I'm just like, it's all the same. The tactics are all the same. They take people that don't know any different. And it's the same thing with the audits. They take people like us who don't know anything about anything when it comes to this, because guess what? There's never been one of these before. Um, and nobody knows what to do. So we're all just like, well, we want to do what Arizona did. Well, we're just taking their word for it. And half of us didn't even know what a FOIA request was or how to file one.
Yep.
And, we formed we have groups in each state where we do the work. So the chats are just chats. And I use the main This America chat just for like news and stuff, and, getting some truth out there. People don't want to hear, but the state chats are, we have work groups that we use, and we do it. We have a FOIA group that just dedicated to FOIAs, and we've had so much trouble getting voter rolls, and here's all these foundations taking money in the name of election integrity and audit all 50. But every time we ask them for help, they tell us they can get it, and then we never hear back from them. I was assured we would be able to get all the voter rolls, everything for free. They were going to get all of them to us because people had already gotten them and all this stuff. And I mean, I've been in contact with everyone personally involved except for Cyber Ninjas, Patrick Byrne, and Lin Wood and Mike Flynn. But everybody else that's involved, well, Sydney, I haven't talked to her directly. I've texted them personally. So
Well, I'll
Dr.
give you some
Frank
information
Telegram.
about.
What do you say?
I'll give you some information about that. I want to back up real quick and just talk about John Pierce, just to get this out there so everybody knows. Recently, Lin Wood has been attacking me, right? He's been attacking Free Kyle USA, and he was implying that John Pierce is part of Free Kyle USA. John Pierce was fired by Kyle personally on February 1st. For several things that he did. One, he just didn't think about Kyle as a client. So he introduced, it was his fault. It was his arrangements that nearly really screwed Kyle, right? And Kyle had no idea who these people were, but John sent people. John made plans. Like John flew them down to Miami. John's reason for going down there was to meet with a litigation funder. John tried to get on two separate attempts. John tried to get a $1 million loan and collateralize his bond. You heard that right, John.
Yeah, I heard that.
$1 million cash into his account and collateralize it against his $2 million bond. When we went down, I was in Puerto Rico. He took them down to Miami, and unbeknownst to them, John tried to use Kyle as a bit of arm candy, right? Because he wanted to lock in new clients. What people don't know is Wendy freaked out and she called me and said, "Please get here now. We need to get out of here." So I changed my flight and I flew to Miami, and we flew out the next day. We were gone. Okay. That nearly
That's exactly how our channels got used as arm candy for Bannon to excel other people into fame for auditing all 50. Not one of these people pushed the audit all 50 thing until our groups emerged and we were put on Bannon and we were getting 200,000 people on here. And then after the symposium went wrong, then they were all, y'all do FOIAs, y'all audit all 50. It's like, we've been doing that for 2 months.
So yeah, I'm going to tell you about that here in just a second too. So I just want everybody to know, John Pierce, as of right now, he has refused to sign over the right to receive that bond when it's returned. So John Pierce, even though he was fired in February, refuses to turn that over. Okay, so as of right now, if that bond gets paid back tomorrow, John Pierce, with all of his financial troubles, will get a $2 million deposit. He has agreed to sign it over only if, and Kellye, you're going to love this one, only if the Rittenhouses sign a general waiver, and only if he does not have to provide any accounting of their client trust account.
So has anybody considered suing them for this garbage?
Yes. And obviously it takes time to go through the court system, but there has not been one accounting provided to the family of John's client trust account, period. I believe it's because there was high dollar donations given for Wendy and Kyle that were just not disclosed. What lawyer in their right mind would refuse to provide any accounting ever? Period. it's theft and it's fraud across the board. Fightback and John Pierce. And I have no issue saying that because it is.
Well, and then so I noticed on the people from January 6th, Pearson, Powell hopped over and started fundraising off of them. And I think Powell's still in, but I noticed Pierce is out. So did he just make money and run off of them too?
Pierce started up NCLU, the
Right.
National Constitutional Law Union.
Correct.
I apparently pissed a lot of people off, like Tim Pool and all these other people, because I was trying to tell people, do not donate to John Pierce. He's one guy. He's one guy. He has 0 associates, and he has 17 clients from January 6th. What? Right? And he takes in all these donations, and nobody knows where any of it goes. Right? And I guarantee you, he's billing yin yang through the hour. I know John Pierce. I know his capability for duplicity and for deceit. And I was trying to warn these people, like, be very, very careful here. He doesn't have experience doing any kind of defense law, and be very wary of giving money to some organization that he actually states most of this is going to get paid to his firm.
Okay, so do you know
I
if he
warned
has
him.
any of those in common with any of the guys that they're raising money for on the prisoner's record here?
That's who it is. That's who he's got. That's who he's got.
They're raising money for the same exact people?
Yes. Yes. And that's because and this is what I don't know, and this is my question, because last I saw, he no-showed, I think maybe 3 weeks ago, to a hearing on one of the guys, and then he allegedly had COVID, but I don't know what happened after that. I haven't seen, but another client that he has had another attorney sign on. So I'm wondering if he
So
just
him
took
and the
money
cyber
and ran.
ninjas had COVID at the same time?
Yeah.
You can't make this up.
No, you can't. And like, all you got to do is look at John's history, right? My experience with him, I know exactly what he's out for. He's out for money, right? He's got alimony. He's got $70 million. $70 million his firm has in like litigation funding debt. He's got 2 federal tax liens. Like, the guy's in a bad way, right? And just like how he jumped onto Kyle so fast, I mean, what kind of attorney would bill $12.75 an hour without any experience, right? It hurts to even think about it. But he's doing the same thing to the January 6th people, and that's what I was trying to warn people. Like, this NCLU organization, I did some research on it. His CFO isn't even a lawyer yet, and he's facing like 10 felony charges in Pennsylvania for fraud. Right? And so I was trying to warn people, and people were like, "Oh God, there's Dave railing against John Pierce again. Like, he wants to screw people." No, I don't. I believe everybody deserves competent and effective representation, right? And I knew they weren't going to get it that way. So, time will tell.
So what's the connection, if any, with John and Cyber Ninjas, if they were both sick at the same time?
Oh, no, nothing. It's just an excuse. So I'll move over. But the last thing I'll say about Kyle and all that was, Lin attacked me, and I'm going to explain why he attacked me, because that is what is related to the audit. Okay. And then he attacked Free Kyle USA, and he attacked his way to bring in some donations. Right. So we've been doing well with our house file, and we've been getting by. But like, the strange thing is nobody's talking about it. Right. And the reason nobody's talking about Kyle is because of Lin, right? Lin has basically told people to black out anything related to Kyle Rittenhouse because of my involvement with Kyle Rittenhouse, right? And I think that's pretty screwed up. I think that's very screwed up. And that was told to me from a right-wing podcaster who is heavily supported by Mike Lindell and by My Pillow, right? They basically said, "All stop and talking about Kyle." So hopefully that changes soon, because we still need to raise some money